Have you ever felt rejected, unwanted, or unloved? Perhaps you've been passed over for a job, denied admission to a school, or experienced a breakup or divorce. Maybe you've even been rejected by family or friends. It's a painful experience that can leave us feeling lost and alone, wondering if anyone truly cares for us. But the good news is that, although they may have rejected you, God did not. In this sermon, I want to inspire you with the message of God's unwavering love and acceptance, even in the face of rejection. I hope to remind you that you are valued and cherished by God, no matter what others may say or do. Take heart and let's dive in. There was a woman who had been suffering from an issue of blood for years. She had been to countless doctors, but none of them could heal her. She had spent all her money and was left hopeless and alone. But then, she heard about Jesus and how he had healed others with just a touch of his hand. She knew in her heart that he was the only one who could heal her. So she made her way through the crowd and reached out to touch his cloak. And just like that, she was healed. This woman had been rejected by the medical community, but God did not reject her. He saw her pain and suffering, and he had compassion on her. He healed her and gave her a new life. In the book of Genesis, we read about a man named Joseph. Joseph was the son of Jacob and Rachel, and he had 11 brothers. Joseph was loved by his father, which created jealousy among his brothers. They plotted against him and sold him into slavery. Joseph was then taken to Egypt, where he was falsely accused of a crime and thrown into prison. But even though Joseph was rejected by his own family and falsely accused, God did not reject him. God had a plan for Joseph, and he used his rejection and suffering to bring about a greater purpose. Joseph had faith in God, and he trusted that God was in control of his life. In Genesis 50 verse 20, Joseph said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives."
We all face rejection in our lives, whether it be from family, friends, or even strangers. It can be painful and discouraging, but we must remember that God does not reject us. He loves us unconditionally, and He has a plan for our lives, even in the midst of rejection and suffering. In the book of Isaiah, God says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Isaiah 41 verse 10. We can find comfort in knowing that God is always with us, even in our darkest moments. He will strengthen us and help us through our trials, and He will never abandon us. In the New Testament, we read about the Apostle Paul, who faced rejection and persecution throughout his ministry. He was imprisoned, beaten, and stoned, yet he never lost faith in God. In 2 Corinthians 4 verses 8 to 9, Paul wrote, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." Like Joseph and Paul, we can have faith in God and trust that He has a plan for our lives. We may face rejection and suffering, but we can find hope and strength in Him. As it says in Romans 8 verse 28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. If you are feeling rejected or discouraged today, know that God loves you and has a plan for your life. Keep your faith in Him and trust that He will work all things together for your good. As it says in Philippians 4 verse 13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Remember, rejection may come from people, but it does not come from God. He loves you unconditionally and will always be there for you. Trust in Him, and He will lead you through the trials of life. When Moses approached Pharaoh to demand the release of his people from slavery, Pharaoh was not receptive to his plea. In fact, he refused to listen and even increased the burden of the Israelites. Moses must have felt rejected and discouraged, but God did not reject him. God was with him every step of the way, and ultimately, through a series of plagues, He led the Israelites to freedom. Similarly, Joseph was rejected by his own brothers and sold into slavery, but God did not reject him. Through a series of trials and tribulations, Joseph rose to become a powerful ruler in Egypt and saved his family from a devastating famine. These stories from the Bible show us that even when we face rejection and adversity, God is always with us. We may feel alone and helpless at times, but we are never truly alone. God has a plan for each and every one of us, and He will always guide us towards our destiny if we trust in Him. In our own lives, we may face rejection in various forms. A job opportunity we didn't get, a romantic relationship that didn't work out, or even the loss of a loved one. It can be easy to feel like the world is against us, but we must remember that God is always on our side. Romans 8 verse 31 says, "What, then, shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us?" This verse reminds us that no matter what we face in life, God is always with us and will help us overcome any obstacle. It's important to also remember that rejection doesn't define us. Just because we may have been rejected by someone or something, it doesn't mean that we are any less worthy or valuable. Our worth and value come from God, who created us in His image and loves us unconditionally. Psalm 139 verse 14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well." This verse reminds us that we are fearfully and wonderfully made by God, and that we are valuable and loved by Him.
When we face rejection, we must also remember to have faith in God's plan for our lives. We may not understand why things didn't work out the way we wanted them to, but we can trust that God has a greater plan and purpose for us. Proverbs 3 verse 5 to 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight." This verse reminds us to trust in God and submit to His will, and that He will guide us towards the right path.
Although we may face rejection in various forms throughout our lives, we must remember that God did not reject us. He is always with us, guiding us towards our destiny and helping us overcome any obstacle. Rejection does not define us. Our worth and value come from God, who created us in His image and loves us unconditionally. When we face rejection, let us have faith in God's plan for our lives and trust that He will make our path straight. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiration and motivation.